A governor's conference on agricultural trade is currently underway in Richmond, Virginia. The event features industry leaders discussing challenges and opportunities for global ag and forestry exports. RFD-TV's Sarah Mock is on the road and joins us from the event. Sarah?
Well, good morning, Janet, and thank you. We are joining you this morning from Richmond, Virginia, where a pretty local conference has actually turned into something of a national affair after a very big end of the week and weekend for ag and ag trade, both on and off Twitter. We are here with a couple of big voices at the Virginia Governor's Ag Trade Conference. We heard this morning first from Zippy Duvall, the president of the American Farm Bureau. He walked a pretty fine line today. Of course, the Farm Bureau is not taking a stance on many of the issues that are really concerning a lot of folks in agriculture right now. But he did comment on some fears that farmers are having, and then, of course, looked to the opportunities, mainly focused on those opportunities talked about by folks like Ted McKinney, the USDA Undersecretary for Trade, who, of course, also joined us here this morning. He was very much the speaker that people were most excited to hear from, and he, at some point, had a lot of things to say about many of the trade issues involved. But he did, at one point, go through a laundry list of some of the things we're most concerned about this morning. He did, of course, start with trade concerns out of China. He talked about, quote, blustering on all sides, which I think very clearly a direct inference to some statements that President Trump has made. But he was also pressed on that by a member of the audience who asked him, talk a little bit about the other sides. And he did mention that Canada, the EU, China, some of our other trade partners have also made some comments that were unfriendly to our trade agreement. So he thinks that we're seeing a lot of posturing right now. He's not super concerned with how ag will fare in this, which I think was good for a lot of folks around here to hear. Now, of course, he did also talk about NAFTA. Today's the last day of those NAFTA talks in Mexico City. We did expect this to be the last round, the 7th round to be the final round, but we have heard officially that there will be an 8th round back here in Washington and Arlington, Virginia. And that we actually, Mr. McKinney this morning said that he actually expects that to not be the final round. He expects the rounds to go on well into the 3rd or 4th quarter of this year, not to beat those Mexican elections. But he expressed hope on that as well. He also made a very bold accusation against China this morning, saying we really need a reset button with China, that, they've held off U.S. entry into biotech in China several times, and that, that's just not acceptable, that the U.S. ag needs to step up and make some demands, and that China is not maybe the great trading partner that we've expected. So lots of big words out of McKinney this morning, and we expect to hear more from folks throughout the day. Folks are down the hall right now listening to Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, and then we are also hearing from the Canadian and Mexican ambassadors later today. So lots more news to come, and we'll be here following it all. Until then, back to you, Janet.
Well, thank you very much for the update, Sarah. Well, be sure to stay tuned, as Sarah will join us again in our next hour for another update from the Governor's Ag Trade Conference taking place right now in Virginia. Well, FFA members will gather this week to recognize the hard work and the dedication of students and